Jay Bilas, the foremost voice of college basketball, live from San Antonio. I told you off air, man, I am so with you on the tampering. I said this about Indiana. Indiana was tampering with DeFreeze, I think, back in the Bahamas. And I know they were tampering with DeFreeze after the massive loss to Illinois when Woody retired. Dude, this shit's been going on forever. If you're going to bitch about tampering with players, you got to bitch about coaches. I'm so with you on this.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to dump on Kevin Willard or Darian DeVries or anything. It was just sort of the idea that you get a little tired of people talking about loyalty with players and commitment and going through adversity, all that stuff. When coaches are leaving left and right, and they're doing it, negotiating their way out while their teams are playing. And I understand, and I know you do, how the business works. But the players are being held to a different standard that is not only contradictory, it reaches the level of hypocrisy. And that's the only time you can point it out is when that happens with Maryland and Villanova or with West Virginia. I mean, heck, DeVries is a really good guy, but I mean he was at Drake, West Virginia, and Indiana within one calendar year.
Right. Right. He is a really good guy, I guess. I don't know. Excited to have him. I do want to ask you this, though, and I haven't heard anybody really address this in terms of tampering and agents. My son's in the business, and he knows agents, and he's like, Dad, agents are taking 20%, up to 20%, and they're actually moving away from NBA contracts where they get 2% to 20%. Let me put you in a player's position. I get it. But if I'm a guy, just like an NBA player, if I'm a guy, a real guy that's going to have offers, why do I need to pay somebody 20%? Where are you with this agent thing and the money they're making?
Well, I think it's agent to agent, really, how that works. And to me, you want to go with the most reputable person. And that's my view. And the most reputable is not going to take an exorbitant amount of money because they're in it for the long haul. And I'll give you an example. It's a long time ago, but when I was coming out of college, Duke had set up an agents panel for all of us, and we were screening. They were helping us screen agents, and there was a very prominent agent at the time named Larry Fleischer, and he had been the head of the Players Association, and I mean he was a big shot, and he was recruiting me. And I was thinking, what the hell does Larry Fleischer want with me? I mean, I'd be lucky to make an NBA team, and my career is going to be overseas. And he was very kind to me, but my dad was the one that told me there were other agents that I was like, hey Dad, like this guy can devote all his time to me. And my dad said, I'd rather have a little bit of Larry Fleischer's time than all of somebody else, all of this guy's time. You want to go with Fleischer. And I did. It was a great decision. But, I think it comes down, same as choosing a doctor. Like I remember years ago, there was a player who I knew that was going to go with a young, inexperienced agent versus one that had been in the business a long time. And his thing was, well, that guy had to start somewhere too. And I'm like, yeah, but they didn't have to start on you. Like if you were going, if you needed brain surgery, you wouldn't go with a doctor that was doing his first brain surgery. That's your head. Let him work on somebody else. You want to go with the experienced ones. And I think that's what players and their families should be on the lookout for is, there's just because you meet an agent first and establish a relationship doesn't mean that's the right one. And so you have to be a good consumer there too.
Two things. One, I put two of my players with Larry Fleischer, and it was the best move I made. This is going way back, And the other thing, I have a good friend. He's brilliant. And I always told him, you're a doctor, but you ain't going to be my doctor. Because I knew him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, that's just, that's the – let me go this route with you. Everybody tells me that this is bad for players, getting all this money. All right, fine. When will we know that this is bad for players? Like if 1 out of 100 goes bankrupt, when will we know that giving players, let's just go $500,000 to $2 million, whatever? At what point? Because I always ask people, how are we going to judge this is bad for the kids? Like it wouldn't have been bad for you or me to get $500,000 as a junior. What's going to determine this is bad for the kids?
Nothing, because there's no universe in which this is bad. like you and I both have a lot of friends in coaching. You probably have more than I do, but everybody likes to vent, and I get that. Things have changed, and I get the venting, especially from guys. But I told the coach one time who was venting about it, I said, look, if players couldn't drive until now, and the NCAA just said, all right, now everybody's allowed to drive a car, you guys would say, well, what's going to happen now? They're going to get in accidents. They're not going to keep their cars up. They're not going to keep their registration, their license up. They can get a DUI. Yeah, that could all happen. But, most everybody drives, and the overwhelming majority don't have those kind of issues. We're going to have some players that are going to make some poor decisions. They're going to sign with an agent they shouldn't. They're going to make some poor financial decisions. But the overwhelming majority, it's going to be a huge benefit. And the favorite thing I have in this is, when you and I were in college, when we graduated, we were basically, we're not two guys who aren't relatively smart. We had no idea how to handle money when we got out of school. Now these guys and women are financially literate when they leave school. And they've had the opportunity to build some generational wealth that can compound as they go forward if they make some smart decisions with it. And, not to belabor the point, but a couple of years ago, Greg Campy invited me to a panel discussion with Tom Izzo. And one of the panelists was Blake Corum, the running back at Michigan. And at the end of the discussion, they opened it up for audience questions. And someone in the audience asked Corum, why did you come back for your last year? And this was before they started their championship season. And very thoughtful young man. He said, look, I know what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to say that I came back to finish my degree, to win a national championship, and to win the Heisman Trophy. And then he paused and he said, all those things are true. I intend to do all of those things. But he said, I've always had an interest in real estate. And with my NIL money, I've been putting together a real estate portfolio. And I wanted one more year to build that portfolio up before I go into the NFL. And Izzo looked at him like he was a god figure after he finished saying that. And Tom was basically like, not everybody's like you. And my response was, that's true. Not everybody's like Blake Corum. But there are more of Blake Corums out there than you're willing to give credit to. That a lot of these young people are learning a lot. They're making really good decisions. And I haven't noticed any difference in the way players play, compete, the way they interact with each other, the way they interact with their coaches. Now, do they leave more often because they can now and we couldn't? Yeah, they do. But this is the system that the NCAA set up, and they set it up because of money. And so the players are just taking advantage of it.
Are you good? I don't like it, but I don't like every year free agency, but I really don't have an answer. So my fat ass, I sit on a couch, I watch, I love the Final Four. I think the tournament's been great. I didn't like the blowouts, fine, whatever. But what is the answer? If you may not think there needs to be an answer. Hell, I don't know. But what, if anything, is the answer to unlimited free agency in college sports?
Yeah, to your point, I don't care for it either, but I don't look at it as Armageddon either. So we're in a transition period right now, and the transition is about to take place. So as you know, there's that House case in the federal court out in California is settling, and it's supposed to be approved. It's expected to be approved, I think, this week in early April. Once that's approved, that's gonna allow revenue sharing, especially for the Power 5 conferences. And say it's like, I think it's like 22% of revenues that are aggregated with the Power 5 conferences. So everybody can do that if they opt in. So what that's going to mean is all these schools can share like 20 million plus with their athletes. When that's approved, that's going to mean that the schools can now sign their players to multi-year contracts. And when they do that, they can, and that's a cap, essentially, a $20-some million cap. So if they sign their players to multi-year contracts, they can put buyouts in those, and the buyout can be whatever you negotiate with the player. So if a school comes in and says, hey, we can offer you more, that school is going to have to not only pay the player that's going to transfer, but they're going to have to pay the buyout. And the buyout, it's not only a financial penalty to pay that buyout, but the penalty, or excuse me, the buyout number is going to go on the cap for the team the player goes to. So it's really going to mean that the overwhelming majority of players are likely to stay in place, but they're not going to stay in place the way you and I had to. Like, that's why when people talk about loyalty and commitment, like, look, do I think we were loyal and committed? I do, but we couldn't go anywhere. Like, if we transferred, we had to give up a year of our lives. So was it really loyalty, or were we restricted? And now when you sign a contract, I think that's going to be an expression of loyalty, and that there's going to be consequences that come with it. And hopefully that'll reduce. I think that'll reduce the transfer market significantly, and then the players, everybody will benefit from that, including the players.
How much of that $22 million is going to go to basketball? How much to football? I know it's everybody's choice, but that was part of the Kevin Willard thing, right? I mean, Kevin Willard, and then Loxley came out and said, "Wait a second, it's one of the reasons, Jay. I don't know if you agree with this or not. I kind of think Xavier was a good job. You didn't have to deal with football. You didn't have to deal with, if you wanted an easier lifestyle. But how much of that's going to be a war between basketball, women's basketball, football?"
There'll be a lot of decisions that have to be made, and football is going to take the overwhelming majority of it. I shouldn't say overwhelming majority. Football is going to take the lion's share of it, let's say, and then they're going to have to make decisions on everything else. And as part of this settlement, this house settlement, we're going to have roster limits. So a men's basketball team will be 15 roster spots and no more. But everybody on the roster can have a scholarship if they want. There'll be no scholarship limits, just roster limits. So now the big complaint is, well, that could eliminate walk-on spots. Like, at some point you're kind of going, look, this is competition. And like, this is not everybody gets a uniform. I'm okay with, if that's a sacrifice that needs to be made so the players can be treated fairly, then we have to make that sacrifice. But some schools may have to choose, look, do we need 30 sports? Like, when you and I were in school back in the 80s, I'm not sure how many sports teams had or schools had, but they didn't have 30. They had 30 because of this, avalanche of money that's been going on over the last 30, 40 years. And I just don't know what the right number is. The SEC has 18 sports per school, and nobody's complaining that they're not providing opportunities for young people. So if some school says, you know what, we don't need a rowing program anymore, or a fencing program, I don't know. Like, that's going to be up to each school to decide what's important to us, what are we willing to do, and what's best for our university. But football is going to be first, and then basketball is going to be second until the landscape changes.
I'm gonna get to the tournament. I don't know whether the tournament is better or worse. I know this. I know that senior-laden teams in the MAC, at least when I was in the MAC, we lost in a championship game with a senior-laden team to a senior-laden Kent team that went to the Elite Eight. So, you can compete in your league, whether you can compete. But I will say this, Jay, I think this is a great Final Four. Like, I think if you're going to run a tournament, you want the best four teams getting there. I know we all love San Diego State. I know we all love FAU, but I ain't mad at this Final Four, and I would love to see the games closer in the first round. That's kind of what I've talked about. Upsets, we'll see whether there are 10 years from now. I don't know. But I do think this is a great tournament because we got a great Final Four. What'd you say? It was idiot-proof? Isn't that what you always would say? The tournament is idiot-proof?
Yeah. And Dan, you've been in this a million years. Like, I think it's a year-to-year proposition. So 2 years ago, NIL and the portal were involved 2 years ago, and we had Florida Atlantic, San Diego State in the Final Four. And this year was not a year of a lot of upsets. So, but you go back to 2008, we had all four number ones in the Final Four in 2008. Well, that was a long time before NIL and all this. So for the people, like, I respect the opinion, but the people saying, well, this is NIL is killing the mid majors. No, it's not. One data point to make a trend is just 1 year. And, a couple of years ago, I found this kind of interesting. So when we talk about the loyalty issue, 2 years ago, Florida Atlantic goes to the Final Four, had a great team. Everybody came back. Every single player came back. And the next year they went to the tournament again. They didn't do as well as Final Four, obviously. And the following year, everybody transferred because Dusty May went to Michigan. He left, and then the players left, and he took Vlad Golden with him. Elijah Martin went to Florida. John L. Davis went to Arkansas. The coaches are a part of this too. And if you want people to stay, maybe you ought to stay. Maybe that's part of it. Because look, Purdue seems to be able to keep their players. So they get a transfer here and there, but they seem to be able to do it. If you want to do it, you can do it.
Yeah, I'm going to argue with you on that point in a couple years if the first round games continue to be routes. I equate. I go, let's just see here. Let's see if it's like the Pittsburgh Pirates having a good player and they always go. I know my son's team just kept 2 players, both of whom were offered a hell of a lot more money. They kept Johnny Kinziger, Chase Walker, and big celebrate. We'll see. But I'm not ready to go nuts on it now. But in a couple years, because I do believe that the Akrons of the world, our team, whatever, senior laden, you can't get those kids. My kids would have left after their first or second year. Antonio Gates would have left for Kent. We'll see. Hey, how do you break this down? Houston, and by the way, Boeheim and I were discussing this, and I think Cooper Flagg's best freshman I've seen in college basketball. Used to be Zion. Before that, it was Magic Johnson. I don't know why I feel that way, Jay. I saw you say he's the best freshman Duke has ever had. Where are you at with Flagg, all time, what he's doing?
He's right up there with anybody that's ever had a freshman year, like Carmelo Anthony, you name it, Anthony Davis at Kentucky. He's just so impactful in so many areas of the game. And he's the real thing. And he's different on a competitive level too. Like there are a whole bunch of players that are top level competitors, but there are gradations in that too. And he's at the highest level of competitor and kind of playing every play and seeing the game and all that. And he's only 18. He's going to continue to get better. I don't know where the ceiling is, but I think it's really high. But he's different than Zion. Zion was a phenomenon, unlike anything I'd ever seen. But overall, Flagg's a better player overall. And I think actually, if you look back, you probably heard me say this. I think Grant Hill's the best player Duke's ever had. But Flagg's a better freshman than Grant was, and Grant was a hell of a freshman. You don't see guys like Cooper Flagg very often.
What's going to happen? The other thing about this game, people tell me that Houston can't score. They're a hell of a shooting team. They are a hell of a shooting team. And working with Sampson the 1 year that I did, one thing he can do is he can get a shooter a shot. And I think Houston's a little undervalued here offensively, no?
Yeah, no. They shoot 40% from free, and there are 3 guards, Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, and LJ Cryer. All of them shoot 41% or better. And the only issue, Dan, is the length that Duke has and how they switch. Yeah. I do think they can cause a lot of problems for Houston. I think these are the 2 best defensive teams. I mean, they are by the numbers, but I think truly when you watch it, they're the 2 best defensive teams. I just think it'll be interesting. Like Houston, as you know, has the ability to really turn the game into a half-court slugfest. And I don't mean slugfest, foul fest. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to get anything done. And I'd be really surprised if this game got above the 70s. I think it's going to be played in the 60s and 70s. And look, I think Duke's better. If it were a 7-game series, I think Duke would win that. But Houston is big and strong, and they're really experienced. And the one thing that I keeps coming to the forefront of my mind is Duke hasn't played in a close game in a long time. And that's where Houston lives. And if this is a close game, you wonder how Duke is going to respond when it's not something they've dealt with a lot in the past month. Like they've won 30 out of 31, and most of them have been blowouts. And one of the close games they had, they lost at Clemson.
I'm going to go about something different here. I haven't talked to you since this happened. Why did Coach K or Duke or whoever did it, why Scheyer over the other guys? He's proven to be the best choice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. But why going backwards a little bit, Jay? Why was Scheyer Coach K's guy over Tommy or other guys?
I don't know that he had a favorite in it. It's just Coach K had a succession plan, and that's why he did he didn't take the extra year, to be celebrated everywhere he went, get rocking chairs and gifts. he did it, I believe, to put his successor in place, whoever that person was going to be. I don't know all the ins and outs of how everything was done, but my understanding was Coach K was kind of in the background, but it was pretty clear he thought Jon would be a great choice, if not the choice. And Jon is so far beyond his years. He's got a calmness about him, and he makes really good decisions after strong consideration to the options. He's not only an outstanding coach on the floor and all that, he's a leader. And I've been incredibly impressed. I always have been, but you never know how things are going to work out anyway. And this has not only worked out; it's been a grand slam home run.
Oh my God, it's been seamless. It's been seamless in every area. He sounds like Duke. He looks like. I mean, I don't know if he looks like Duke, but he sounds like Duke. It's like, you know what I mean? It's amazing. I guess shouldn't be surprised. But all right, hey, the other one, Florida, Auburn. What are you seeing?
I like Florida. Auburn is fully capable. Any of these four is fully capable of winning this thing. I really believe that.
I know it.
But Florida's just they've got four big guys. They've got four guards. They keep coming at you, and they've got something like Auburn's got a bucket getter at Janai Broom. They can throw it into him in the post, and he can score, get fouled, or both. But Walter Clayton Jr. is different. Like he can create his own. And the last couple of wins, the win they had over UConn, and then the one over Texas Tech. Like, look, I get it. If Texas Tech had made the front end of 2 1-1s, we're probably talking about Texas Tech right now. But Florida still had to pull that out of the fire, and Clayton and Thomas Houck did it. Clayton's not afraid of anything. And he was a football player in high school. He was being recruited by Florida for football, and he wound up going to Iona and playing for Rick Pitino. And that's one of the transfer portal things I'm a big fan of is a lot of these guys who are undervalued out of high school. Like, why should they be relegated to where they started when they can play at a higher level and wanted to be there from the beginning? That I think is a good aspect of it. But Clayton's a real deal. So I think I favor Florida in that game.
All right, they told me to ask you, are you this makes total sense to me. When I was at ESPN doing games, I never picked a game. I mean, I didn't want to pick a game because people said you're biased enough. Why do I need to pick a game? And that just brings on a bigger headache to me. Is that where you're at with this? Because, if you're doing the game, people don't want you to pick it.
Yeah, I don't pick games I'm doing, but I don't, I've sort of surrendered. I mean, when they first started asking us to pick games on game day and stuff, I'm like, we don't know who's going to win. Like, I have no idea who's going to win. Like, when we first started in this, or when I first started, I was called a color commentator. We were supposed to give people the keys to the game and watch for this, and here's why this team is good. And then it became like, we're going to tell people who's going to win. Like, do I favor a team? Sure. But I don't know. And if I knew, I'd be in Vegas, by the pool with a drink in my hand, raking in my winnings. But, I kind of, it gets people fired up and the media companies like it. So I do it. And, you do the bracket and all that stuff. But once I do the bracket, I don't even look at it. I don't care. I don't care who wins these games. I just enjoy watching.
You used the word surrender. I've surrendered in all areas. For a long time, I tried to be the moral authority in my own mind on all things transfer and paying players. And, but I did always feel this way relative to paying players. My brother had to get up and work in a steel mill every morning. And we had bunk beds. And he would had to get up at like 4, work into Gary Works. And I would roll over and say, you should have practiced more because I was on scholarship. And he would punch me every morning. Boom! I'd get drilled, and I'd turn my back, laugh. So I always thought that was payment, but now screw it, man. I tamper with everybody. I don't give a shit. Pay everybody. Just make sure the guys that do TV shows keep getting a lot of money. That's all I give a shit in this day and age, Jay. That's it, man. That's it.
Well, the one area where you've surrendered, and I'm really proud of you, is you went full bald like me instead of that ridiculous comb over you tried for a lot of years. And you look as good as you can look right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember sitting in front of you and Schulman is taking pictures, and I'm like, oh, man, 3 bottles of wine and COVID, baby. 3 bottles of wine, my wife, me, my stepson on the back porch. I'm like, get this shit out of here. Let's go. Hey, hey, enjoy San Antonio. Thanks for your time. Fun stuff, man. Hello to the family. Hey, wait a second. Too. What's your daughter doing? Always liked your daughter. She was working on sets and stuff. Where's she at?
You're kind. She lives in Charlotte, not too far from us, and she has her own. She's an artist, professional artist, so she has her own company that deals with art.
Yeah, tell your son hello too. Love your kids.
I will,
and your wife.
Yeah, you're kind.
Yeah, hello to your family. Thanks, brother.
Same to you.
Thanks, Jay.
See you, buddy. Bye.
There he goes, Jay Bilas. Yeah, I look back and I'm like, didn't anybody tell me to get rid of this damn comb over that I had? What are you doing?